All right. Welcome to the Healthy Families World podcast. I am back with my best friend ever, Brittany Hutchison. Hi, Brittany. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. Brittany was on with me on episode 31, and now we're on episode 140. Can you believe that, Brittany?
I can't
And
believe it.
the topic then was sibling rivalry, something you and I have both gone through a ton with our kids, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Brittany, she's like one of the best moms I know. So I always like to get her on the podcast for these kind of topics because a lot of us are struggling in our parenting and somehow she is figuring it out a lot better than I am. So I always look to the experts in this category. That's
Oh,
you.
thanks, Heather. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So Brittany and I, little background, we met in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Our husbands were both in chiropractic school together, and she and I were in the same church, and that's where we met. And we were so excited to become best friends because we had kids the same age. Our first babies
Mhm.
were born, I believe, in the same year, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yeah, she's up. Yeah, same
Yeah.
year.
She had a girl, I had a boy, and eighth grade now.
Eighth grade.
Eighth grade, yes. Okay.
Yeah,
I held
wow.
I held Dax back a year, so I didn't know if Hallie was above him in a grade, but no, they're both in eighth grade. So, all right. Here's the topic today, guys. It's called how to discipline our kids without breaking their spirit. This is a tough question because I posted this on Facebook and a lot of people were like, I'm not really sure, but I want to follow this thread. I want to see what people say, because a lot of us resort to yelling and screaming at our kids because it works, right? We're like, well, now they're
Mhm.
listening to me. I raised my voice or I spanked them. But then we find that that is really kind of breaking their spirit as a person. So we're trying to figure out ways to discipline without doing that, but also getting the behavior we want. So what do you think about that topic, Brittany?
I think it's something every parent can relate to. Every parent needs help with. Obviously, none of us are perfect and we're doing our best, but at times we will make mistakes. So the reminders constantly are really good for me, even to revisit and remind myself these are the ways that I want to respond, not based on how I feel in the moment, but have a plan ahead of time so that when those feelings come, I'm like, okay, this is what I do so that I don't beat them down emotionally, physically,
Right.
anyway,
Because it's easy to just act right on emotion and do one
right.
or the other, right? And then what I
Yeah.
found when I've like spanked or screamed, I hate the way I feel about myself when I do that.
Yeah.
It's not even so much about, oh no, I hurt my child. It's more like I hate whom I'm becoming when I do that. And it breaks my spirit in turn. Like it really does break me because that's not who I am at my core. But I talk to other moms who are like, oh yeah, you just got to give them a good spank and their kids are so well behaved. I'm like, but how do you do it without breaking your own spirit? Like I can't do that, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't feel good. It's not what you want, and it's not the type of relationship you want with your kids.
I got spanked when I was a kid. And I feel like it broke my spirit as a kid. So I think a lot of parents who do spank were spanked as kids too, but somehow they turn off the emotion around all of it and they just know they have to
Yeah.
do it. And I think there is a way to spank off. Obviously, they say don't spank out of anger. And yeah, I think that could work too, but I still can't do it. What do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. And it doesn't feel lasting with my
Yeah.
kids either.
But that's not to say it probably hasn't worked for kids out there, right? Because we know there are
Oh,
some
yeah.
very well behaved kids whose parents do not spank out of anger, but use it as a tool to correct the behavior. I just want to throw that out there. There's no right or wrong way, but this episode is basically for parents who are looking for a way to discipline without breaking their spirit or their kid's spirit. Okay. So let's talk about maybe a book or two we might have read, because I always have to go back to the experts again in these areas to
Mhm.
help guide me and help remind me of how to do things. Are you reading something right now? Have you found something that's been helpful?
Um, well, the two books that I've used, reference, and constantly refer back to with parenting is um, the Love and Logic philosophy. Um, and they have tons of books in their all different categories for different ages of life. And Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids
Hmm.
is
I
a
have that
really
one.
good tool. Yeah, I like both of those a lot. Recently, I read, and this is not necessarily with um, this specific topic, but I feel like all parenting books weave together. Now that I'm entering this teenage, preteen stage and this new stage of life and parenting, and buttons are being pushed in different ways that haven't been before, and there's, um, my child wanting to have more independence, it's hard for me. And so I recently read this book, How to Hug a Porcupine.
That's
Getting through the
awesome.
prickly tween years, I think, or something was like the tagline. And that was really helpful for the older kid stage. And
I
whenever
need
I'm
that.
hitting a wall with my kids, whatever it is, there's tension, the relationship's not good. I mean, I just always go find a book. There are so many good resources out there.
So
Just
many good.
go read something and you'll have a better grasp on how you're feeling and how you can improve the relationship with your kids.
Okay, that's good. Now, what I will say, I'm going to definitely go look up those books. I have heard of Love and Logic. I do have Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. Did not hear How to Hug a Porcupine, but I have a porcupine in my house right now. So I need to learn
Yep.
the ways, because some of these kids, when they turn 13, 14, 15, they really like to isolate and just be on their phone or do their own thing or like tune you out. And this
hmm
gets really hard for me because I'm not sure where the line is where I need to take something away or, but then it's like
Right.
always taking something away. And now they don't have their independence because that's like you said, that's kind of what they're fighting for is their independence to have that power, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book I'm reading right now is, again, this is my favorite one, and I'm reading it for the second time. If I Have to Tell You One More Time by Amy McCready. She's good. She goes over some Adlerian. I don't know if you've heard of the Adlerian theory or principles, but it's very much based on how to discipline well without breaking the spirit type of thing. So I love
Okay.
her ideas, but let's go over some suggestions. What should we do to maybe decrease or avoid a power struggle? What do you think a tip would be there? And then I'll give a tip.
A power struggle. Hmm.
Your kid comes to
Giving,
you, they really like want to do this thing. You don't want them to do this thing, and there could be a power struggle there. So,
I would say taking taking a step back in the moment to process is something that helps me a lot. So I'm not reactive. And also giving options instead of just
mm,
like a harsh no, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Giving options is good. Giving choices. That's actually one I had on here, like saying you can either do this or this,
Right.
It's the either or principle that in this book I'm reading talks about a lot too. Like give them a choice. Instead of this, you can either do this or do that. And then it helps them pick one or the other. But use either or a lot in your parenting.
Yeah.
And that gives the kid a sense of power, right? Of independence to be able to choose at least something that feels good for you,
Yeah.
right?
I love that.
Um, I've always found with Dax that I have to tell him in advance, kind of like what
Yeah.
I expect. Have you found this? Like if
Yes.
you don't tell him in advance, it's almost back on you. Like, oh shoot, I should
hmm
have told him in advance what the consequence is going to be or what's going to happen here, or we're going to go here and this is how I expect you to behave. Like if I tell them in advance, it's so much better.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. If they know the expectation, it's clear, then it's done. And
Mhm.
also to go along with that, holding your own expectations to their own standard, Kids
Yeah.
want boundaries. They want them to be clear. If you bend them every time, your word will hold nothing. So
Mhm.
it can be a struggle every time, or it can be a struggle one time. And then they're like, okay, yeah, mom's serious about this.
Yeah. What do you think about if they do break whatever the thing is that you kind of gave the advance notice? Now we have to have a consequence without breaking their spirit. What do you think the consequence should be? Like, what are we talking about here? Should it relate to the thing specifically? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be a logical consequence. So, for example, they stayed up too late or something like that. They didn't go to bed when they were supposed to the next night. The consequence is the next night they go to bed earlier, or they don't get to go with their friend late that next night because they have to get to bed on time. It's the consequence and the action are linked. It wouldn't make any sense in the child's mind. They're actually not learning anything if you're just like, oh, you didn't listen to me, you stayed up later than you're supposed to. Now you, let's like an off the wall consequence, like, well, even just spanking them, we'll just go with that, spank. Now they're just thinking, oh, I get spanked when I'm bad and I'm scared of my mom now, versus I need to get my sleep. That's important. It's not that the teaching is done through the consequences. And I found out with like not breaking the spirit, the less I talk, the better. Like, I
Hmm.
don't need to lecture and ramble. I just say it one time and say, hey, when you do XYZ, this happens. And then when they do it, the consequence happens. And I don't need to say anything. The
Yeah.
consequence did the talking.
Yeah.
And that way there's no power struggle. You don't have to engage.
Yep.
If they're pushing and fighting, you don't have to engage. Say, I'm really sorry. Yeah, that's what happens. Love you though.
Yeah.
Love you too much to argue. That's one of my key phrases that I have learned from Love and Logic. And I use it all the time when they start going at me. I love you too much to argue. They just roll their eyes and they're so annoyed about it. But guess what? The arguing stops. The
And
struggle
that
stops.
is one thing I've learned, like, you have to stay calm. If
Yes.
you, because what they're looking for is to push your button and to get a reaction out of you. If you have kind of told them in advance and then they do the thing, or they're being needy in some way and you know that they can do something for themselves, but they keep asking you to do it, you say, I have all the confidence in the world. You're getting big now that you can do this all on your own. And then you stay calm and you walk away, just so you
Right.
don't like be there so they can argue and want to fight you on it and try to
Right.
negotiate. You can't be there in the same room because they're going to try every time to manipulate and negotiate. And that's
Yep.
where I found, like, you've already stated that you have confidence in them, you trust them, you're out.
Right.
You can do this. What do you think about that?
It really is their job to push back, that they're
Mhm.
learning and growing. It's like a budding flower out of the ground, it has to push. That's their job. Our job is to stay calm. If we can just remember that that's our job and to just separate ourselves, it's so hard. It's easier said than done, of course, but like separate ourselves from the emotions. Don't get wrapped into it. When they do push and they are fighting back, look at it like expect it.
Yeah,
Don't be upset when it's happening, and
exactly.
then just like my job is to stay calm now, so I'm just going to focus on me and what I need to do.
Yeah. Of course they're pushing back, right? They're 14, 15, 12, 10, whatever. Of course they're going to. Even though I've told them a
Right.
million times, of course they're still going to do it. If I just still
Right.
have that thought, I'm not like, "Oh my gosh, they should know. I've told them a million times." But if I just say, "Of course they're doing this." Like,
Right.
that tells my brain, "Okay, I just got to go back and retrain again for the millionth time. It's okay."
Right.
It's a process of retraining. The hardest part for me about being a parent is that consistency piece. When I
Uh-huh.
say you're not gonna do something and then I actually give you the thing a few days later and it's been like, and you're supposed to be going a week without this thing or whatever, they don't really like trust me to follow through on the consequence.
Right.
And so they get away with so much more, and it's easier for me just to give it to them because I'm busy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we say, here's the consequence. It's almost harder on the parent though to make sure we follow through with the consequence. So whatever we say goes. That's why you should be thinking in advance about these consequences. But that's been my mistake, is
Well,
just saying the thing and then like not following through on the thing.
it's easier in the moment to give in, but we have to have the big picture in mind, because big picture, it's way easier to hold your ground and to do what you say. They learn to trust you, and then they stop pushing in that category as much. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean it's never going to be revisited, but they learn. If we just give in, you're going to have to do it again soon.
Oh, you have to do it over and over and over. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Now, there's natural consequences and there is logical consequences. Those logical ones are the ones the parents are giving, but then there's the natural consequence. Say a kid won't wear their coat in the wintertime to school, the natural consequence is they're cold. Say
Right.
they forget their lunch, well, you're not coming to give it to them, so they have to go hungry that day, but they'll remember it the next day, type of thing. What do you
Yeah.
think about the natural consequence kind of leading the way before the logical one comes in?
Yeah. Anytime it can, I say let that one rule.
Let that one rule. And then when you have to do the logical consequence, that's kind of where you have to decide almost in advance, I think. Like you got to
Oh
think
yeah.
about if they're gonna push. It's hard to do it in advance sometimes. It's so spare of the moment. And so we just kind of say something that does not relate to what's going on. But let me give you this scenario and tell me what you would do. There's a child in my family that is late for school every day, like dawdling, doesn't get her stuff together, doesn't anything, right? So I could say, well, the logical consequence is this car leaves at 7:30 a.m. and if you're not in it, you're walking to school. But obviously she can't walk to school these days anymore. And it's so far away. It's like 4 miles from my house. And you know, the way the world is, I don't want her walking that far away.
Hmm.
Um, what do you do? What's the logical consequence that relates to that scenario then? Or maybe this one would have to be unrelated. You know, like if you can't get your act together and get out the door in time, do we take away electronics? That's not related, but what do you think?
Well, I would suggest two things. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was to have the consequence ahead of time so you know what to do. But sometimes, and a lot of times actually, I've found that the best thing to do in those moments is to just say, you know what, I'm this behavior was not okay, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it right now, but we're going to talk later about it so that you have time to process it and figure out what feels good to you and a logical or natural way of handling the situation. Like you don't have to in the moment tell them right now their consequence. Take your time. That's my one tip. And honestly, I almost think it works better. That happened this last weekend with my daughter. We had a really bad sibling bullying moment, and I was really upset at her. And I just put her in a room and just said, I don't know what I'm going to do about the situation, but we are going to deal with, I'm going to be thinking, I'm talking to dad, and we're going to figure out what needs to happen. She, uh, she solved it on her own in the most mature, sweet manner, like an hour later.
Wow.
So it was amazing. That worked out really well. It doesn't always happen like that, but
No.
other times if I take the time to think, I can come back and be like, you know what? I've had time to think about it, and I feel like this is how we need to move forward. And this is what's going to happen. And then I'm able to respond calmly. She's also not in a heightened state either. We're both like neutral, so we can actually have a decent talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was my first thought, and then the second thought was about her being like your child being late for school. Um, I would probably think of, well, why is she late? Is it because she's tired? Is it because she's just easily distracted? What's the issue here? And then base the consequence on that. So I wouldn't feel comfortable with my child walking 4 miles to school either, but I could wake her up at like a really, really early time that she wouldn't want to get up. You know what I mean? And be like,
Hmm.
well, since you're not able to get ready with an hour getting ready for school, you have to wake up 30 minutes earlier. And if that doesn't work, we're going to do 2 hours before we leave for school, and just have it like that and say how quickly you move can prove to me when I can wake you up, and then we can start moving your wake up time so you get more sleep. So I would probably
Yeah.
do an earlier bedtime and an earlier wake up time for my kid if I wanted to do a logical consequence in that type of situation.
Yeah. I love that. What I've noticed is this child does not think of everything she needs until she's in the car ready to go. And we have to like wait. I got to go back in the house and get this and this and this. And I'm like, hello.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you thinking about this in advance? Of course, we should have a checklist by the door or something, you
Yeah.
know? But then it's like something new pops up in her head the second she gets in the car. Oh, wait, maybe I want a protein shake today. You know, it's kind of like,
Right.
come on, like, let's go. So,
It's true, but I have these little lists I have for my kids. It says each child and their morning routine and their after school routine, and I just lay them on the counter. And I've done them different ways where they had a whiteboard to move them or just something like that. Um, and they check it off And then instead of me saying to them repeatedly, like, have you brushed your teeth yet? Have you brushed your teeth? Your hair's not brushed still? Are you still not brushing your teeth? I'll just say, what's next on your list? And
Mm,
just have the list be telling them what to do instead of me.
I like
And
that.
that has helped a lot with morning chaos, trying to get out the door.
Yeah. Okay.
And
What do
kids,
you,
I mean, always reward them. If you're having a really bad struggle, I would be like, if you get your list done before school by whatever time you have to leave, if you get it done by 7:30 so we can get out the door on time, every day this week on Friday, you get to, you know, pick
oh,
a
I like
treat to
that
get on the
idea.
way home from
That would
school or
motivate my daughter. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
You got to kind of find their currency, right? That is
yes.
awesome. Yeah. I like that idea. I need to do that more because she likes that too. All right, let's quickly transition to sassy kids who are being rude and disrespectful to you as parents in a way, whether it's texting or screaming at you or saying things that are just totally inappropriate, or perhaps they're being disrespectful to a grandparent or something, you know? So
Mhm.
how do we handle disrespect and sassy, like just rude? And where is this coming from? Because I'm finding this generation of older kids coming in now, it's more and more like that. What do you think?
Yeah. I feel like my littlest one, who's 5, is my sassiest. Um, my older kids really haven't pushed that a whole lot. Of course, they're not, they do some. So I don't know if I feel the most qualified for that. I would just whenever starting when they're young, whenever they come at me like mean or aggressive or whiny or even just talking like a baby, like in a way that I don't want to talk to them. If they're not
Mhm.
talking at me, I will say a couple phrases and I stick to them, which is this. Um, I'll talk to you when your voice is as calm as mine. And I just repeat that. And I'll also say things like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you when you talk that way. I don't understand sass. I don't speak sass,
Yeah.
and just not engage until and always separation will do the trick. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like you can say all those words you want in your room. You can sass me as loud as you want outside. But in this house, we don't do that. That doesn't sound good to my ears. I don't understand,
Can't
you know what I
hear
mean?
you.
Those types of
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
But I haven't really I know teenagers can be extremely sassy and
Mhm.
horribly mean, and I haven't had that yet.
Oh, you
Ugh,
lucky.
cross my fingers. I mean,
Yeah,
she, of
so
course, did.
I'm going through this whole unfair thing. Like
Oh,
this one child feels it's unfair and that we love this other child more than the other because this other child gets more time on electronics or whatever. But the thing is this other child isn't as rude as this other child, you
yeah,
know? And so this other child gets things taken away quite often because of his
yeah,
sassy, rude attitude. And then he sees
yeah,
his sister getting it and he's like, that is so unfair. And then he hates her and has so much resentment for her. And then he
yeah,
hates me and he'll like say the most rude, like I'm working out at the gym on Saturday and I'm getting a whole lecture from him in text messages, just like telling me how to parent and you're not paying attention and your brain is so small type of thing, like rude stuff, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, dude, I am done right now with you. Like, I can't do this right now. Like, calm
yeah,
down. I'll come home and we'll make it fair by taking away all electronics. And now nobody gets it. You know what I mean? Like, if there's
right.
something that you're going to fight over and find unfair, let's just make sure you don't get it. And I don't even know if that's the way to do it because I feel like it takes away more of their independence, but the behavior sure is better without it over the long run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am struggling in that area right now of just backbiting and sarcasm and disrespect and rudeness and all of that. So I'm trying to figure that out
Well,
as far
you
as
need to read the
consequences.
Porcupine book, Heather. You
Yes,
need to read the
I have that
Porcupine book.
down.
That will help you. Because I think it helped me realize what was normal teenage behavior and when it went too far, and how to talk to them and approach things in a way that's not going to send their quills up. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
and there's just one thing that I remember huge from that was it's just like, don't do the defiance dance is what they called it.
hmm.
Just don't engage. Like, if they're being defiant, not doing it, it takes two people. So he
It's so
can send
true.
all the texts he wants to you and he can say all the things he wants to you. And it's real hard because we're human beings and we don't want to be treated certain ways, but like just leave the dance floor. You know what I mean? Like don't engage. And then when they're calm and when you calm, you can talk about it. I don't think that it's wrong for you to obviously, when they're not hyped up and you're hyped up, to address it and be like, the way you talk to me was not okay. And so I don't know the right consequence, but if we're going logical, it could be like, you're not going to have a phone for a week because you can't text kindly, but we
That's a
can
good
try
idea.
again in a week and see how your texts are. I
Yeah.
don't really know, but it's
Yeah.
just a suggestion. You can get your wheels thinking at least about what
Mhm.
would work.
And then the thought that comes to my mind is, oh no, he's going to hate me for doing that. And now he's not going to talk to me. He's going to isolate even more. And now when he gets older, he's going to rebel and do all the things I don't want him to do. And now he's going to leave all the good behind and do all the bad. And now I have an adult child who never comes home and talks to his mom. Like all these thoughts come to my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, if I do this, he's going to push back this way and totally rebel. How do we as moms like just take a deep breath and parent from how we know is like true to our core the right way, but also like let go of this could happen type of thing, you know?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, of course, we're all going to have fear in parenting and have worry and stress. I mean, it's a huge part of the game. I don't think you can avoid those feelings. I think you can just try to center yourself and remember that it's not real. Like you've just that's your anxiety talking. That's not a real
Mhm.
fact. He's not talking to you. He's not rebelling. He's not an adult child who's not coming home at Christmas. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
none of those things. He's a kid who needs boundaries right now. Like that's the truth. What is the truth in the situation? Find that and then hold on to that.
Then can I ask you this? How do we as parents set boundaries but let go of control? Like so much control. This is
Oh
a tough
gosh.
one for me too, to know the boundaries, but not feel like I'm controlling every little thing he does and being a helicopter parent. Because I feel like that's what he needs right now. You know, it's
Right.
hard to like know what that line is. And that's where I struggle the most, I think.
That's a hard one. Of course, really hard. Because I
So
think I struggle with that too. You know, I'm just like, I'm real quick to be like, if it's not working, get rid of it all, or something like that. You
exactly.
know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes, I do.
Instead
Yes.
of figuring out a, a good way to work it in and have a balanced relationship with whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay, what's the question again?
So how do we set boundaries without
Uh,
totally controlling every little thing? You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, that's just a hard balance to try to fit
Like,
in. I think
we
what we
have to
talked
let
about,
go. We have to let
right,
go and be like, they have agency. They have to be able to make their own choices, and I have to be able to trust them. But how do I trust them when they've broken my trust so many times and I gotta create these boundaries now? Like, I get
right.
really confused.
Give them as many options and choices on in things that don't matter. If you want to wear that horrible shirt every single day and it smells or something, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
go for it. But when it's something that is true to their character and to your morals and values,
Mm.
that's when you don't, that's when the line is hard.
Yeah.
But when it comes to other things, I give as much freedom as you can and let them explore and be whoever they want to be, just while keeping true to your core values. I don't know if that
Ooh,
makes
that
sense.
is so good. Yeah. Okay. So I wrote that down. So you just gotta, I think what you're saying is to keep the boundary strong around your core values and how you want to kind of run your household that way. I like to say, keeping the spirit in my house, right? Like if
Right.
you're
Yeah.
doing things to like bring that yucky spirit in, like I'm gonna set a boundary there for sure. Like
Right.
this isn't coming in no way, no how, right?
Right.
But in the little choices here and there and the freedoms that maybe don't matter as much, you let
Right.
them have that.
You have to learn where you can let it go. There's some things that I would love to control more that I don't. Like, let's just talk about food, for example. And
Mhm.
you being a health coach, we can totally relate on that. If it was up to me, it would just be fruits, vegetables, healthiest, most yummiest, nutritious lunches and breakfast all the time with no fun,
No
according
fun.
to them.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've had to learn to like let go a little bit. And when they are making those decisions that maybe make me cringe inside, just be like, I can't fight this. Like, I have to find a way to allow some freedom here so that there's no resentment. If you're
Mhm.
trying to have rules on every little tiny thing, they're going to resent you. But there's other things that I can't let my boundaries down on, like the media we let in our house, for example. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mhm.
That is going to have a strong boundary because it affects their character.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So like I have this teenager now that all his friends have watched The Office, have watched Stranger Things, and I personally am not comfortable. Like I guess I'm a little prude that way, but I'm like, there's stuff in it I've seen. I'm not comfortable with the dialogue. I'm not comfortable with this and that. Now, if we get VidAngel, I'm comfortable with you watching that, you know? Maybe we can edit
Mhm.
some of that stuff out. That's fine. But he just feels so left out of his group because all of their parents, whether they're religious or not, are letting their kids watch these things, you know? And I don't know what to do
Yeah.
with a parent that's saying no when it's happening within even high standard families. Like, what do I do as a parent here to keep, like, I feel like I'm so controlling. Do I just let him watch the shows so he can have something to talk about with his friends? But then there's stuff I'm not comfortable with, you know?
Right. I think I found that if you take the time to explain, they're pretty receptive. You know, you can, I tell my girls all the time when something like this comes up, I understand that that probably really sucks that you don't get to do A, B, C, or D that your friends are all doing. Like, I remember being your age and feeling that way and feeling left out. But I will never make a decision about you based on what other people are doing. I'm
Mm,
going to do what feels good to me. And I don't feel comfortable with that because I can make a ton of mistakes in my life, but I can't mess up on raising you. You are my most important person. I'm in charge of who you become, you know,
mhm.
and I can't mess up. And I love you and you're too precious to me. And that doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that. And you know what? You can always, I tell my kids this too, you can always blame me. You can tell all your friends I'm the worst person in the world. You can tell them that my mom this, that. I'm like, blame me. If you're too embarrassed to say that you can't do something, just always blame me.
Yeah.
I don't care if they think
I'll
I'm
be
cool
the
or not.
punching bag. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
just let me know. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good thing too. I think it's just you feel guilty as a parent, like I should let them because all these other people are doing it
Right.
too. Maybe I should just like get you sometimes you question that. Like maybe I should just get maybe I'm being too controlling.
Right.
Yeah, I should just let them watch this because they could easily just sneak out and watch it anyway at a friend's house, you know?
Well, one of the things it says in the porcupine book is to kind of gauge what other kids your child's age are doing. So I'm not talking about media necessarily, but let's just say that he wanted to walk to like Circle K and back with his friends and you didn't feel comfortable with it. But most teenage kids are doing that. And then maybe you can self reflect and be like, okay, am I being controlling here? Do I need to give him some freedom? Is there a way I can allow him to do this that I'm comfortable with and he's comfortable with? Like, how can we find a compromise here? So then maybe you're like, okay, I'll let you go, but I need you to be home in an hour. You need to take the phone and leave your GPS on. And I need to, whatever that is. When it
Mhm.
comes to Stranger Things, you have the great idea of getting, or whatever show, the great idea of getting VidAngel. That sounds like a perfect compromise. Like,
Yeah,
I know this is important to you. A lot of other kids are doing it your age. I'm not fully comfortable with that. So let's find a way we can both work this out.
exactly. It's a win-win, right? Like
Yeah.
Stephen Covey talks about having a win-win when it comes to
Yeah.
your parenting and that. And I just want to mention, as we're wrapping up here, Amy McCready in that book, if I have to tell you one more time, she says it's so important to give that mind, body, soul time to each child, which is 10 minutes twice a day, individual time to each child. And they typically have less and less problems with siblings, with you, but just needing,
Hmm.
they just really need your attention. And sometimes they're going to get it if it's bad attention or whatever. They just need that attention. So how important has it been like for you as a mom to spend that one-on-one time with your kids?
That is key to everything.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, and it's taken me a long time to figure that out. But whenever a kid is struggling, when our relationship is off, when our connection is off, like one on one time is the healing balm to any kid issue. It really is.
Mhm.
Especially if I feel disconnected from them. Something I like to do is just pull them from school for lunch. They
Mm,
think that's the coolest, and
the
it's
coolest thing.
only like, yeah, it's only like an hour, maybe 30 minutes of my time, but they're like, "Oh," and I don't tell them, I'll surprise them, be like, "Let's go to lunch
Mm,
together."
so good.
Or just a little bit of one-on-one time like that, like anything you can do to build the relationship, I say relationship first,
Yes.
and then everything else can fall into place because it all starts there.
Yeah. And this mind, body, soul time, it's a little harder with teenagers when they don't want to spend time with you and you're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
well, how do I just like ease my way into their life to sneak in and spend time? Like, what am I doing? What does that look like? And for me, I found sometimes it has to be late at night, like when I don't want to get out of bed, but I know that they're
Mhm.
still awake, kind of hanging out. And I got to go like sit down and just ask them questions and hang out and get into their world somehow. It's
Yeah,
inconvenient,
let
usually an
them
inconvenient time for me, but
it's not gonna be fun for you.
yeah,
Like, it's not about you.
it's
So
not.
you just have to be like, "Oh, cool, you're watching whatever dumb show. Can I watch it with you? Tell me about this character." Or like,
Hmm.
my daughter is like super into K-pop, which is
K-pop.
just
Yeah.
not my thing,
Yeah.
but I will just ask her about show me some dance moves. Let's listen to it together, and it makes her feel special. It's about her,
Yes.
and then it's the time put in is worth it. It ends up benefiting me, just not necessarily at that moment watching a bunch of Asian boys dance, but like
Mhm,
later
mhm.
on, our
Yeah.
relationship is better when I need her. So,
Totally. Yeah, I have found for Dax, like, you have to find what they do like, and he's into real estate big time. So he
really
loves to, like
cool.
he wants to be a real estate agent too, and so he just would love for me to take him and drive him around these fancy neighborhoods and look at houses, and
Uh-huh,
he'd be like, "Ooh, this is what I like about that one. I like the door on that. I like the windows on that." He'll totally just, like, go
uh-huh.
off on real estate stuff, which is
That's
kind of fun because
adorable.
I like to do that too, of course,
Yeah,
and
I know.
dream and
I'm like,
imagine and
"Hmm."
stuff. So even like going out to an ice cream and going and driving around, that would mean a lot to you
Yeah,
just have to figure out what your child loves, kind of what they're into at the
yeah.
time and do that with them. But she recommends 2 times a day, 10 minutes each child if you can squeeze that in. If not, 10 minutes a day each child. And if you have too many kids, every other day, but try to get them all in, that time.
It's hard. You would think 10 minutes, oh, that's not
You would
that
think
much.
that's easy. It's
Right.
actually so hard.
It is
Mm,
so hard. I'm like, okay, 10 minutes, that's 40 minutes 2 times a day for me. I don't really know. But
yeah.
an easy, quick way to connect, I've found, is just at bedtime. If you can't do it
Yes.
any other time, just say, hey, can I lay with you tonight? And just spend 5 minutes in each bed, play 20 questions, or just read a book, just
Would you
some sort of
rather?
would you rather? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's great. Okay, so I what are the key takeaways here for not breaking a child's spirit? What do you think listeners can really take away from this today?
Well, I guess first off would be what we just last talked about, connection number one. We should have said that at the beginning,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Mhm.
The next is give them choices, options, right?
Mhm. Give them
Don't do
choices. Yep.
so much talking. Let the consequences do the talking for
Mhm.
you. What else did we touch on?
We talked about telling them in advance, like
Yes.
if you're going to behave this way, this is going to happen, just so you know. And then
Yes.
when you have to give the consequence, you give it and you walk away, you're calm, you're never escalating. You're not gonna give in to negotiating or whining or any of that. That's
Also, if you don't have the consequence, to take time. Take time away. You don't have to give it right then in the moment. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay to revisit.
Yeah, it's okay to put them aside and say, "I really have to think about a consequence here. What you did
Yeah,
and what you said was not okay. So, let me think about
right.
this." Yeah. What
Yeah.
if your child is coming to you just real quick and they're telling you something in confidence that they did and you're like, "Well, that's not honest," or that's not good. Like, and now you kinda wanna be, like, giving them a lecture, but they're, like, telling you this in confidence type of thing.
Right.
Like, it's that part's tricky too as a parent,
It is tricky.
because 'cause you're like, "You need to go back and
Hmm.
make that right." If it was a shoplifting thing that your friend was doing and he gave you that candy bar but you didn't shoplift it, but you got it or
Right.
whatever. Like, sometimes they're in these scenarios where they're like, "Isn't that cool that I got this free treat?" And you're like, "Well, how did you get it? Like, what?"
Yes, I would say approach it with curiosity when you're in that type of moment. is like, huh, how do you think you got that? Well, don't you usually have to pay for stuff? You know, instead of let them come to the conclusion on their own as you sort of probe with the right questions.
Yeah. So you can't really come at them with a huge like that was wrong. That there needs to be a consequence because obviously they're
Yeah,
involved in something that they don't understand is like bad in
right.
some ways, you know?
And whenever anyone's attacked, whether it's you, me, even as adults, I mean, our walls go up, our defenses go up. There's no room for teaching, there's no room for growth. But if I recently read something about this and about dealing with teenagers, and it was I just remember approaching things with curiosity,
Mm,
and I was like, I got to remember that in my head
just be
because
curious. Mhm.
teenagers say the dumbest things.
Yes, they do.
And even just last night, Eric and I, we were going through our junior high yearbooks, and the things that I said and
I
did
know.
to people in those pictures are like so embarrassing. And
It's so
it gave
embarrassing.
me, yes, it
I
gave
had
me
to throw
like,
all of mine away, Brittany, because I was like, if my kids get their hands on these, they'll see some of these things people wrote in my yearbook, like, forget
yeah,
it. Yeah.
I had people that I had like X'd out their faces and wrote the meanest things about them or just things like that. And I'm like, okay, it gave me empathy for my kids because we're struggling with a couple of things with my older two, different, like, just kind of irreverent comments that they keep making that are bothering me. And I keep having to reinforce and be like, okay, this is normal at this age. Me
Yeah.
even seeing mine was like, okay, this is normal at this age. And I'm just going to try to approach it with curiosity versus finger shelling. You know what I mean? Like, how dare you? You know that you blah, 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 blah,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Totally.
So,
Okay. I love all of that. And I love you. And we need to get another lunch date
mm,
on the books for the end of September or early
okay,
October. So for sure.
let's do it. That sounds good.
All right. My favorite parent friend.
Okay.
Love you so much. Thank
Love
you so
you.
much for this chat. You're amazing.
Thanks, Heather. Talk to you soon.